I'm Abigail.
And my name's Olivia. Welcome back to Reconciliation or Exploitation, the podcast where we separate real reconciliation from, well, a very expensive PR stunt.
That's right. Today we're diving into economic reconciliation. Is it actually helping Indigenous communities or just another way for corporations to profit?
Oh, come on! Economic reconciliation is all about partnerships, opportunities, and growth.
Or is it land grabs, corporate greed, and the same colonial system with a new face?
Let's dive into it today. Okay, before we get into it, let's explain what economic reconciliation actually even means. Basically, it's the idea that instead of saying sorry about colonization, the government and businesses should create economic partnerships with Indigenous communities.
Sounds nice, right? Well, here's the thing. Who's actually benefiting from these partnerships? Are Indigenous communities really gaining power and wealth? Or are they just being offered a small slice of the pie while corporations still call the shots?
The article from The Breach argues that economic reconciliation is mostly a false promise. Governments and corporations talk big game about Indigenous partnerships, but in reality, most of these still favor corporations instead of Indigenous communities.
Yeah, it's like saying, hey, we stole your house, but how about we give you a part-time job mowing the lawn? The power imbalance is still there.
Yeah, so instead of real self-determination, Indigenous communities get symbolic involvement. A few contracts, maybe 1 or 2 jobs, but no real control.
Exactly. And here's the thing. Some Indigenous nations do support economic reconciliation, but on their own terms. The problem is when government or corporations decide what's best for them without proper consultation.
Yeah.
And here's a word from our sponsors.
At break.
This episode is sponsored by Big Mining Inc. Because nothing says reconciliation like digging up your lands without consent.
That's right, folks. Need minerals? Who cares about Indigenous land rights? Call Big Mining Inc. Now with 20% more greenwashing.
Disclaimer. Big Mining Inc. is not responsible for any broken treaties, polluted rivers, or broken promises.
Let's talk about some real-world examples. In Canada, we've seen companies announce partnerships with Indigenous communities, but later it turns out those communities weren't properly consulted or were pressured into signing deals that they didn't really benefit from.
Yeah, like the whole situation with Coastal GasLink and Wet'suwet'en land defenders. The government and industry claimed that there was Indigenous approval, but a lot of Wet'suwet'en leaders actually strongly opposed the project. So is that really reconciliation? Okay, so what does real reconciliation actually look like?
Well, for starters, Indigenous communities need real decision-making power. That means land-back movements that return control to Indigenous nations, resource revenue sharing where Indigenous communities own and manage the projects, and real consultation, not just check-the-box exercises.
Yeah, I agree. So what do you think? Is economic reconciliation a step forward or just a new way to keep the old system in place?
Well, I'd say if it doesn't shift power to Indigenous communities, it's just reconciliation in name only. Businesses and the government need to actively engage in benefit-sharing agreements and give Indigenous communities a meaningful stake in their operations.
I agree. Thanks for listening to Reconciliation or Exploitation. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and most importantly, stay informed.